Hello and welcome to this video. I'm so happy you're here because what I'm about to share might change the way you look at your life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like everything was going wrong? Like no matter how hard you try, life keeps getting harder? I've been there too. I know how it feels to lose everything, to feel tired, broken, and ready to give up. But this story is not about staying down. It's about standing up again. It's about how I hit rock bottom and how I slowly found the strength to rise. This is not just my story. It's a message for anyone who feels lost, weak, or afraid. So please don't scroll away. Stay with me until the end. I promise this story will touch your heart and remind you that you are not alone and that you are stronger than you think. Her name was Grace Parker. She was an ordinary woman, but she had an extraordinary heart. Grace believed in working hard, helping others, and building a better future for herself. She lived alone in a small but cozy apartment. She had a steady job at a company where she worked for 4 years. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid her bills. Most importantly, it gave her hope. Every morning, she woke up early, made a cup of coffee, and smiled at herself in the mirror. She told herself, "One day, everything will fall into place." But one day, everything did fall, but not the way she hoped. It started with a phone call. She was getting ready for work, just like every other day. She had her coat in one hand and her phone in the other. The call was from her manager. He sounded serious. "Grace, I'm really sorry," he said. "We have to let some people go. The company is downsizing. Your position is no longer available." She stood still, unable to move. Her coat dropped to the floor. Her heartbeat got louder. Her face turned pale. "But why me?" she asked, almost whispering. "I've worked so hard." The answer didn't matter. The decision was already made. At first, Grace tried to stay strong. She thought it was just a small bump in the road. She told herself, "It's okay. I'll find a new job soon." She updated her resume, applied online, wrote cover letters, and waited. Every day she checked her email. Every time the phone rang, her heart raced with hope. But the replies didn't come. The phone stayed silent. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into 2 long, painful months. Soon her money began to run out. She stopped buying new things. Then she cut down on food. She skipped breakfast and sometimes dinner. She started walking instead of taking the bus. At night, she sat in the dark to save on electricity. She sold some of her clothes and furniture online, anything to pay the rent. But in the 3rd month, the landlord knocked on her door. "Grace, I'm sorry, but you're 3 weeks late. I can't give you more time." She nodded. Her eyes were full of tears, but she didn't argue. She packed her few remaining things into 2 bags and left the apartment that once felt like her safe place. She moved in with an old friend who offered her a small room with no heater and a broken window. The nights were cold. The silence was loud. Grace spent her nights staring at the ceiling, asking herself, "What did I do wrong?" She didn't talk much during the day. She pretended to smile, but inside, she felt broken. People she once called friends stopped checking in. No one asked if she was okay. No one saw her pain. She sat in front of her old laptop every day, still applying for jobs, still trying, but every rejection made her feel smaller. Some nights, she cried herself to sleep, thinking maybe this was the end of her story. That was her rock bottom. But even in the middle of that darkness, a small voice inside her refused to die. It wasn't loud. It wasn't powerful. But it was there. A quiet whisper. Don't give up. And Grace listened. Grace didn't wake up one morning feeling strong. She didn't suddenly feel brave or powerful. No, it was slow. It was quiet. The pain was still there. The fear hadn't gone, but something had changed inside her. A tiny shift. That small voice, the one that said, "Don't give up," started to speak a little louder each day. One morning, she sat on the floor of the small room she now called home. Her knees were pulled to her chest, and her hair was messy from another sleepless night. The light from the broken window hit her face. It was cold. She looked at the old photo of her younger self taped to the wall. That girl had dreams in her eyes. That girl believed in miracles. "I can't let her down," Grace whispered. "I have to try again." That day, she made a decision. She promised herself one thing. "I will not give up. I don't know how or when things will get better, but I will not stay here forever." She took a deep breath and wiped her tears. She opened her old notebook and wrote 3 words in bold letters. Start. Small. Today. That became her rule. She didn't start by applying to big companies. She didn't aim for perfection. Instead, she focused on small steps. She cleaned her space. She wrote in her journal. She went outside for a short walk, just to feel the sun on her face. That walk felt like a mountain climb, but she did it. Every tiny action gave her a little bit of strength back. She also started reading again. Books about strong women. Stories of people who had lost everything and still found a way to rise. Every story gave her hope. Every page reminded her, you are not alone. She stopped waiting for others to check in. She reached out. She messaged old friends. Some replied, some didn't. But that was okay. She wasn't trying to get approval. She was rebuilding herself. One day, while scrolling online, she saw a post that said, "The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of the world, but those who fight silent battles inside their rooms." She stared at those words for a long time. She felt like it was written just for her. That night, she smiled for the first time in weeks. Not a fake smile, but a small, real one. Grace wasn't healed yet. She wasn't back on her feet completely, but she had taken her first steps. And sometimes, that's more powerful than anything else. Grace continued her small steps each day. She didn't have much, but she had something no one could take from her. Hope. It wasn't always strong. Some mornings she still felt empty. Some nights the tears still came. But even on those days she kept going. She made a routine for herself. Wake up early, drink a glass of water, open the window, write one positive thing in her notebook. It didn't matter how small. Some days, she wrote, "I got out of bed." Other days, "I didn't cry today." To anyone else, these things may seem small, but to Grace, they were signs of strength. She also started learning new skills online. Free courses, YouTube videos, and articles became her teachers. She learned how to design simple graphics. She watched videos on writing, speaking, and building confidence. Every new skill gave her a sense of power. It made her feel like she was in control of something again. One afternoon, while sitting in a cafe using free Wi-Fi, she saw a small ad. Freelance writer needed, beginner welcome. Her heart jumped. She had never done paid writing before, but she had always loved words. She hesitated. Her hands shook as she wrote a short email to apply. She didn't expect much, but 2 days later she got a reply. "You're hired." "Let's start with one article," the message said. Grace cried when she read it, but this time there were happy tears. She danced alone in the tiny room, holding her phone like it was gold. It wasn't just about the job. It was about what it meant. It meant she was moving forward. She was no longer stuck. The first article wasn't easy. She doubted herself. What if I mess it up? What if they hate it? She thought. But she pushed those voices aside. She sat down, took a deep breath, and wrote from the heart. She submitted it with shaking hands. The client loved it. They sent her more work. Not much money, but enough to buy groceries on her own for the first time in months. She bought bread, milk, and a few apples. That simple grocery trip felt like a celebration. She even bought a small notebook and a pen as a gift to herself. Slowly, her life began to shift. Not in big ways, but in quiet, beautiful moments. She still had problems. She still had fear. But now she also had progress. She had her first client, her first earnings, her first steps back toward the life she once dreamed of. And she did it not by being perfect, but by refusing to give up. With every small success, Grace began to believe in herself again. She started writing more articles, short stories, and personal reflections. Writing became more than just work. It became her therapy, her escape, and her healing. Her words were honest, raw, and full of emotion. People who read them could feel her pain, her strength, and her truth. One day, she decided to create a blog. She called it The Quiet Climb, because her journey was not loud, but it was powerful. She shared stories of what it felt like to lose everything and start again. She wrote about the nights she cried, the mornings she forced herself to smile, and the lessons she learned from falling. At first, only a few people read her blog, but slowly her words began to spread. A young girl from India sent her a message. "Thank you. I was about to give up, but your story gave me hope." Then another message came, and then another. Women, students, single mothers, and even strangers who felt alone found comfort in Grace's story. She realized something important. Her pain had a purpose. Her voice was helping others rise. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel useless. She felt seen. She felt strong. One night, she stood in front of a small mirror in the room that once felt like a prison. She looked at herself closely. The sadness in her eyes was softer now. There were still scars, but there was also light. "I'm proud of you," she whispered to her reflection. "You didn't quit. You kept going." She no longer waited for life to fix itself. She was building her life, brick by brick, word by word, one day at a time. Even when she felt tired, even when her doubts returned, she remembered where she came from. She remembered the broken window, the cold nights, and the silence that once felt like the end, and she smiled, because she was no longer that woman. She had changed. She had found her voice, and now she was using it to light the way for others. 2 years after she lost everything, Grace Parker stood in her own kitchen, holding a cup of warm tea. The apartment was small, but it was hers. She had worked hard to get here. There was no expensive furniture, no perfect decorations, but the peace in her heart was worth more than gold. She looked around at the space she had made for herself. On one wall was her vision board. Some of the goals were already crossed out. She had published her first small book, a collection of stories called Letters from Rock Bottom. It wasn't a bestseller, but it touched hearts, and that was enough. Grace had also been invited to speak at a local women's group. At first, she was nervous. Her hands shook as she held the microphone. But when she began to speak, the words flowed like water. She told them the truth about the job loss, the cold room, the tears, and the fear. But she also told them about hope, about faith, about never giving up, even when the world feels like it's ending. When she finished speaking, there was silence in the room. Then, slow claps turned into a standing ovation. A woman came up to her with tears in their eyes. One said, "You told my story. Thank you for being brave enough to share yours." That moment changed something inside Grace. She realized she was no longer just surviving. She was now living. Her story wasn't just a story anymore. It had become a light for others. A message that said, "You are not broken. You are becoming." Grace started mentoring other women who were going through hard times. She gave them advice, shared free tools, and most importantly, she listened. She never forgot what it felt like to be ignored, to be forgotten, to cry alone in the dark. That memory made her kind. It made her strong. Looking back, Grace didn't regret the pain. It had shaped her. The brokenness, the silence, the nights she wanted to give up. They all led her here, to this moment, to this peace, to this strength. One evening, she sat by the window, watching the sun set. The sky turned orange and pink, and the world looked quiet and calm. She smiled and whispered to herself, "This is not the end. This is just a new beginning." And it was. Because Grace Parker didn't just rise from rock bottom, she built a new life from it. If you're watching this and you're going through a hard time, please don't give up. I know it hurts. I know you're tired, but your story is not over yet. Like Grace, you might feel broken now. You might feel alone, lost, or afraid, but just like her, you can rise again, step by step, day by day. Even if all you can do today is breathe, that's enough. Keep going. You are not weak. You are not a failure. You are becoming stronger, even if you don't see it yet. One day you'll look back and say, "I made it through." And that moment will be worth everything. So stay with your journey, believe in yourself, and remember, the darkest nights often lead to the brightest mornings. Thank you for being here. I'm proud of you.